You know the problem with being the bully on the playground? You don't have to necessarily be the strongest person. You don't necessarily have to be the fastest person. You don't even have to be the meanest person. You just have to be the person who just doesn't care. You're a bully because you don't care who you bully. You bully because you assume that most people won't stand up for themselves. You bully people because you believe that if it came down to a physical confrontation, you win 9 times out of 10 because of pure intellectual fear. You position yourself to win the fight by the amount of emotional distress you put on the opposing party. Well, I just described Iran for you. Iran has been the bully in the Middle East for as long as I've been alive. And no one wants to confront them because they got so many different participants and proxies out there. And the threat is, well, we have nuclear weapons, or maybe we do, maybe we don't. We got ballistic missiles, maybe we do, maybe we don't. Now, I'm going to explain to you why I believe that the Iranian regime doesn't care about losing $250 million a day. I'm going to explain to you why the financial pressure doesn't bother them. And the reason why it doesn't bother them is they have control an estimate of 200 plus billion barrels of oil today in reserves at today's technology and today's economics. 200 billion barrels of oil. Okay. The average break-even lifting cost to go drill a well and lift to the surface is somewhere between $10 and $20 a barrel. So consider that the base cost just to get it out of the ground. By the time they build refineries and pipelines and they do all the equipment and storage, it's like $20 to $40 a barrel. But for Iran to produce oil and cover all their military, their financial needs to run their country, as a 2025 quote, they need $124 a barrel. So one would think that because of that financial requirement, they'd be like, wait a minute, you shut down the Strait of Hormuz, you've limited our supply, we're cutting our wells back, we can't get our tankers out, we got to have the money. But let me tell you why they're not worried. Let me tell you why they're absolutely relaxed. They firmly believe that during the process of the war with the United States and Israel, they're making conditional bartering with those who are going to support them in terms of financial needs going forward when the war is either over and they have to rebuild. They look at who's going to buy their oil, India, China, certain Asian countries, etc. And they're saying, look, you guys consume 15 to 20 million barrels a day, China. You've been a proxy for us. You've been behind us. Just consider this. We're going to owe you $40, $50 billion worth of crude oil in terms of exchange for protecting us and covering us and keeping us stable and supplying us with reconnaissance and information and weapons. And if it lasts 3, 4, 5 months, so let's say we owe you $100 billion. Big deal. Because of the blockade, because the strait's been shut down, look at the price of oil. You were smart, China. You put at 1.2 billion barrels in reserves. You bought it for like $45 to $50 a barrel back when COVID started, back when oil prices were depressed. You filled up your reserves. You kept buying when prices were low. So you can get that extra 15 million barrels a day out of your reserves. You don't have to go buy it at $100 a barrel. But guess what? The minute the war's over, everyone believes, all the financial geniuses out there say, don't worry, when the strait's open and the war's over, oil's going to plummet back to $55 or $60 a barrel. Not going to happen. It's going to be somewhere north of $80 to $90 a barrel for probably the next 2 to 3 years. Just look back at history. If that's true, when Iran comes on board, what should be a $10 to $20 lifting cost, they're being paid $80 to $100 a barrel. If it costs $20 or $40 a barrel in order for them to be able to put in the infrastructure and pipelines and repair all the damage from the war, they need $20 to $40 a barrel. To run their country, they need $124 a barrel, except guess what? They don't need $124 a barrel. They've already advanced sold it on premium conditions to countries like India or China or others who buy their oil, and they're going to continue to buy it. What they'll do is to simply exchange dollars. We'll give you 100 million barrels of oil at an average price of $65 a barrel. You get a great deal, we get a great deal, and that offsets the money and the advancement and the financial coverage you're giving me today. Again, folks, I'm not a political pundit. I'm not involved with any kind of internal resource or knowledge. I don't have any insight to the administration's plans. I'm just a guy who says from a street smart position, if I had the same thing happen to me and I'm in Iran, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be guaranteeing future supply of crude oil at a discounted price to offset any kind of financial help, reconnaissance, military, anything else that you can give me, potential future customers, that gets me through the next 4, 6, 8, 12 months until we come to a conclusive ceasefire and conclusive end of the war between Israel, the United States, and Iran. Now, why is that important for all of us to know? It's important to know if you're trying to estimate and understand what's going to cause Iran to come to the table. Iran's not coming to the table with the ideology they have, and the leaders of the Iranian regime understand if we surrender, our own people are going to kill us, because we have basically run the country of 60 million people or more by threat and fear and intimidation. If we acquiesce and we sign a ceasefire based on the change in that ideology, the change in having a nuclear weapon, the change in certain components of their ideology, they no longer have the strength to carry and crush and manipulate the other 60 million citizens in Iran. They're not going to agree. They're not going to give in. What they're doing is they're selling the back half of that agreement, which is, how do we financially survive and wait out President Trump? He's only got 30 months left in his term. If he loses the midterms, he becomes neutered. He becomes put in a position of no control. House or Senate or both, he loses that. He's not going to be able to do in the last 2 years of his term what he thinks he can do, and now there's a major stalemate. Well, that's what Iran wants. They want a stalemate. They want to say, we made it to the election. President Trump loses the House and the Senate or both. He's basically ineffective the last 24 months of his term, and so we just sit here and wait him out. And the backside of that is either a weaker Republican candidate or it's a Democratic candidate who's not necessarily pro-fossil fuel, pro-war, pro-American strength, whatever the Democratic Party stands for at that point in time. And the Iranians say, we made it. We made it till the chokehold was released, and now we're free to do what we want. This is a long-term game for Iran. It's a long-term game for China, for India, for other countries who need massive amounts of crude oil and fossil fuels to run their countries at the cheapest price they can get. So to me, I look at this and say, the Iranian regime is in a position right now today, they're not going to give in, they're not going to concede, and all they're doing is buying for time. And they know they have the President of the United States in a position where he started up a hornet's nest and he can't figure out how to get out of it. Again, I'm not second-guessing the president. I'm simply saying what I see as being the obvious facts. Iran today will be a significant force forever until somebody goes in and roots out all the bad actors, and that requires boots on the ground, which is not favorable. I'll leave you with this thought. It's not about what's happening today. It's about what's happening today in terms of what's going to happen in 2 to 4 years when there's a change in the White House, change in policy. In that change, it looks like, unless you have a continuation of the strength of President Trump in his convictions of what he thinks is right, if that position and that direction that President Trump has today with his cabinet changes 5, 10, 20%, it is almost the equivalent of 100% acquiesce or reduction in the policy and what the United States president and his administration is trying to do. It's like surrendering if there's any pullback from the current administration's plans and policies pertaining to the Iranian war. Iran will outlast us. They will trade their oil for future concessions in a bartering contract, and when they get back online, they'll make up for it like that because oil prices will be higher. They have tons of oil, and oil is what's going to trade across the globe to every country that needs cheaper energy for their own countries to survive.